In 2024, the UK authorities are rolling out their own sustainability disclosure regime, or UK SDR, with labels, rules on marketing, as well as rules on the use of ESG terms in fund names. In this video, we have packed the latest regulatory intelligence on UK SDR, and as a bonus, we will also look at the implications that the new regime will have on European retail investment funds once admitted again in the UK market. Let's dive in. The UK was dealing with Brexit and the withdrawal from the European Union at the time when Europe launched its world-first endeavor to have a regime for disclosure on sustainability-related features and claims made by financial products. The approach adopted by the UK was to opt not to onshore the European rules in its own legislative architecture, and this has allowed them to come out with rules that are more in line with the needs of its market. Hang on a minute, I did mention onshoring here. Do you know what it means? When the UK was preparing to withdraw from the European Union, it had some European law applicable on its territory, which was linked then to other internal legislation. For the legislative system in the UK to continue to function efficiently post-Brexit, they needed to onshore, which means import selected European law into their internal legislation. In essence, copy, paste, make it British. This is onshoring. Class dismissed. Now let's go back to the video. When we look at the UK SDR, to understand its feature, it makes sense to have a comparison with the European corresponding regime. The regime in Europe is essentially product-centric, which means that the disclosures and the rules on the disclosures are designed based on the product, depending on the actual claim that a product makes in terms of sustainability. The approach adopted with the UK SDR is consumer and market-centric. The goal is to make sure that consumers can navigate a market of sustainable products, distinguish them via the labels from products that are not sustainable, and at the same time make sure that they can understand the differences between different sustainable products. This is why labels play a pivotal role in the architecture, and so the marketing rules and the rules on the use of ESG terms in fund names, for instance, which seemed to be divorced in the European corresponding example from the main architecture on the disclosure. One of the challenges of UK authorities is to find that fine balance between sovereignty, which means rules, and ability to issue rules that are exactly in line with the needs of the UK market, and at the same time being coherent from an international perspective, because UK firms have a global remit and they have to comply with European rules, and they will have to comply with American rules as well. The UK SDR is in line in principle with the European regime, for instance, and the UK authorities are also offering an official gap analysis, which would help UK and European firms alike to comply with both regimes if that becomes a possibility in the future. The label, which is one of the pivotal aspects of the UK SDR, will be granted only to products that have a measurable, objective and quantifiable sustainability aim or objective, if you like, to their strategy. There will be a way to measure the sustainability in practice of this product using two types of identifier, if you like. One is the enterprise contribution, which is the one that is mainly used nowadays in the market, especially in Europe, and the new one, which is called investor contribution. The The enterprise contribution is the sustainability of the investable asset per se, how the asset itself contributes to a sustainable objective. For a product to be eligible for a label in the UK, also the way the particular investment is structured, the portfolio is decided, how that adds up in terms of attaining the sustainable objective will be relevant in the assessment of the sustainability profile of a product. What is also interesting is that UK authorities have concluded that considering ESG risks or specific ESG characteristics in a strategy is becoming part of a standard investment mandate, and it doesn't indicate that the product is sustainable as such. It might be an ESG tilt as they define it, but considering ESG risks will not be sufficient to qualify for a label. This consideration brings us to another interesting point, which is the use of ESG terms in fund names. Under UK SDR, only products or funds that qualify for a label and that comply with the required disclosure will be able to use ESG terms in their names, and they will be able to use different ESG terms depending on the label. We know already that the term impact will be allowed to be used only by funds that qualify for the highest sustainability label. What happens if a strategy has an ESG tilt, if you like, but it's not sustainable as such, it doesn't qualify for a label? A compromise that was adopted as a consequence of an initial consultation on UK SDR is that in these cases it is possible to reflect in the name the ESG tilt without using any of the ESG terms that a labeled product could use, subject to complying with all the disclosures that a labeled product would have to comply with. So there is some sort of flexibility and the possibility to make reference in the fund name, for instance, to a specific ESG characteristic, even when the product doesn't qualify for the label. One last point that it makes sense to touch on is related to the general anti-greenwashing rule that is introduced under UK SDR. Authorized firms will have to make sure that in the financial promotions, in the marketing communications, where there is a sustainability element involved, these communications are fair, clear, and non-misleading. The fact that the anti-greenwashing rule is so broad is because in the eyes of the UK authorities, and considering the fact that greenwashing can happen at different levels and at different stages in the journey of the consumer to buy a product, all the angles need to be covered, if you like. As we mentioned at the beginning of this video, it is important also to look at the implications that this new sustainability disclosure regime in the UK will have on European funds, European retail funds, once admitted again on the UK fund market via the overseas fund regime. And if you want to know more about the overseas fund regime, we've linked an article in the description of this video. By the beginning of December 2024, distributors will have to place prominently on the disclosure of European funds a mention to the fact that these funds don't qualify for a UK sustainability label. This is because so far it is not clear yet whether under the overseas fund regime European investment products, European investment funds will be eligible to apply for an UK label. It follows from the overseas fund regime also that European retail funds will have to have another prominent disclosure to the extent that they don't comply with the ombudsman regime and they don't offer the financial services compensation scheme. Optically, European funds will look differently compared to UK funds because of these disclosures, and so we might think that there might be a bias of consumer that acts in the market independently towards UK funds. At the same time, the point of whether UK SDR will be applicable also to European funds, it's still in a limbo. We can't exclude that European retail funds will be able to apply for a UK label, and at the same time the UK authorities have offered this sort of official gap analysis, which would make easier the task of European product managers to comply with the UK label. And also, if we look at the second iteration of SFDR, which is underway, there are labels also there which the FCA also compares with the existing labels under the UK SDR. If you made it to this part of the video, I wanted to thank you for your support. I would love if you hit like to this video and subscribe to the channel. There is more to come on sustainability, Brexit, distribution, and all the good things. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.